My name is Carmen, and I've always been the black sheep of my family. I didn't fit into their world of high-powered careers, perfect homes, and glossy achievements. For as long as I could remember, the family reunions were a battlefield of sharp comments and comparisons, with my sister Lucia always in the spotlight. This year was supposed to be no different, except I had a secret that would change everything. You see, the luxurious Hotel Miramar, the setting for this annual gathering, was now mine. I inherited it 6 months ago when my grandfather passed away, though no one knew about it. The family had always treated me like the least important member, dismissing my career as a graphic designer as if it were some kind of hobby. But now I owned the very place they would stay for the weekend, the same hotel they considered their personal paradise. I arrived at the hotel's grand lobby, feeling a nervous pulse race through my veins. There I watched as my sister Lucia, the golden child, was greeted with hugs and smiles by everyone. No one seemed to notice me until my mother caught sight of me and frowned in that way she always did. "I thought you weren't coming, Carmen," she remarked, her disappointment so obvious that it didn't need to be said. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, managing a smile that I knew didn't reach my eyes. My brother-in-law, Roberto, ever the critic, eyed me with his usual judgment. "Looks like the graphic design business isn't exactly booming, huh?" he remarked with a thinly veiled sneer. If only he knew. My small design firm had blossomed into a successful agency with high-profile international clients, but I never corrected their misconceptions. What hurt the most, however, was a secret I kept. This five-star hotel, its immaculate gardens, a sweeping ocean view, was now mine. My grandfather had always seen something in me that the rest of the family chose to ignore. The room assignments were made. My mother, playing the role of organizer as always, handed out the keys with Manager Miguel standing by her side. Lucia and her husband, naturally, were assigned the presidential suite with a breathtaking ocean view. My parents got an executive suite. My cousins all had deluxe rooms. And then there was me. Carmen, my mother said, "You'll stay in room 108 on the first floor, right next to the laundry room. It's small and a bit noisy, but it'll be fine for you." There were some awkward glances exchanged, some tinged with shame, others barely masking their amusement. Miguel, the hotel manager, hesitated for a moment before speaking up. "Ma'am, we could find another option for Miss Carmen," he suggested politely. But my mother was quick to interrupt. "No need. Carmen's simple. She doesn't care about luxuries." I noticed the way Miguel's eyes lingered on me with a silent understanding. He knew the truth, but we'd agreed to keep my ownership a secret for the time being. "It's fine, Miguel," I said with a calm I didn't feel. "Room 108 will be perfect." I took the key from him and walked towards the elevator, feeling the weight of my family's gaze on my back. As I passed, I overheard my cousin Daniela whisper to someone else, "Of course Carmen gets the leftovers." Room 108 was exactly as I remembered it. Small. The window faced the service area, and the hum of the laundry machines filled the air. I sank into the single bed, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't here to confront my family or make a dramatic reveal. I wanted to understand something. Why, after all these years, do they still treat me like I was nothing? Why did they continue to see me as the least valuable, the least worthy of attention? That evening, during the welcome dinner at the hotel restaurant, the family gathered at the best table. My chair was awkwardly placed behind a column, partially hidden from view. As they ordered expensive wines and entrees, I settled for a simple salad. "Can't you afford something better, Carmen?" my father asked, his voice a mix of mockery and pity. "We can pay for a proper meal if you want." "The salad is fine. Thank you," I replied, keeping my voice steady. The conversation quickly turned, as it always did, to Lucia's latest accomplishments, her recent promotion at the bank, her newly built house in an exclusive neighborhood. Lucia always knew exactly what she wanted, my mother said with pride. Not like Carmen, who's still wasting her life on that drawing business. It was then that the head chef, Antonio, came over to greet the table. When he saw me, he gave a slight bow, which didn't go unnoticed. Was everything to your liking, Miss Carmen? He asked with quiet respect. Delicious, Antonio. Thank you, I replied, my voice calm despite the growing tension in the air. Lucia raised an eyebrow. You know the chef? She asked, her voice laced with surprise. We've crossed paths before, I replied, keeping my answer vague. The truth was, I had hired Antonio just 3 months earlier after inheriting the hotel from my grandfather. As the night wore on and the wine kept flowing, the comments grew sharper. I could feel the weight of the secret I was holding. Should I tell them the truth? Would they even believe it if I did? What would they do if they found out that every insult, every bit of ridicule was happening under my own roof? Miguel came over quietly, looking concerned. Miss Carmen, there's something urgent you need to attend to, he said, lowering his voice. What could possibly be urgent for Carmen? Roberto mocked. Did they run out of colored pencils? I stood up calmly, ignoring his words. Excuse me, I'll be back in a moment. In the private office, Miguel looked at me with genuine concern. Miss Carmen, I can't stand seeing how they treat you. You're the owner of this hotel. They should respect you. I know, Miguel, I said, my voice low, but I need to understand something before I reveal the truth. There's a deep wound in this family, one that's been festering for a long time. I think I'm finally starting to understand why they treat me this way. I looked out at the dark sea, feeling the weight of my thoughts. I was closer than ever to finding the answers. Returning to the table, I found my family still indulging in their decadent desserts. My cousin Javier was in the middle of a boastful story about his new sports car when my Aunt Elena, ever the observant one, asked, What did that employee want with you, Carmen? Do you know him? Suddenly, all eyes were on me. Just to mix up with the reservation, I replied, taking a sip of water to steady my nerves. Typical Carmen, Lucia muttered to Roberto, loud enough for me to hear. Always causing problems. Later that night, while the rest of my family retired to their luxurious rooms, I stayed behind in the empty lobby. Miguel approached, carrying a cup of tea. Your grandfather would be proud of you, he said quietly, his voice warm. Don Ernesto always knew you were the one who would best take care of his legacy. I smiled sadly. My grandfather had always believed in me, but sometimes I wondered if he was wrong. Miguel shook his head. In a few months you've been running this hotel. You've already made more improvements than any previous owner. The staff respects you. Don Ernesto wasn't wrong. The next morning during breakfast, I noticed several staff members greeting me with subtle respect, though my family, too busy indulging in the buffet's finest offerings, didn't seem to notice. Carmen, is that all you're eating? My mother asked, eyeing my plate of fruit and yogurt. No wonder you're so thin. You look pale. I'm perfectly healthy, Mom, I said, my voice steady. I just prefer something light to start the day. Roberto snickered. Light? More like cheap. I've always been the quiet one at family gatherings, the one who doesn't quite fit in with the perfect lives my relatives have crafted for themselves. My name is Carmen, and I was the invisible one, the one they pitted, the one they mocked. But this year, everything was about to change. You see, I now own the very hotel where our annual reunion was being held, the magnificent Hotel Miramar. I inherited it 6 months ago when my grandfather passed away. And now here I was, in the same place where my family had always belittled me, holding the secret that would shake everything to its core. They didn't know it yet, but Carmen, the family's least favorite, was the one who owned the empire they all secretly coveted. I arrived at the hotel, feeling a mix of nervous excitement. My sister, Lucia, the golden child of the family, was already there, her arrival met with warm hugs and smiles. As always, she commanded the spotlight. I stood there unnoticed until my mother spotted me. The familiar frown appeared on her face. "I thought you weren't coming, Carmen," she said, her voice laced with disappointment. It was like a slap in the face, but I managed to smile through it. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I said, my voice even, though the words felt like they didn't belong to me. Lucia's husband, Roberto, always eager to pass judgment, looked me up and down. "I guess the graphic design business isn't as glamorous as we thought, huh?" he mocked, his smile thin and condescending. If only he knew the truth. My small design agency had grown into a successful international business, but I had no interest in correcting their false assumptions. What hurt the most wasn't their ignorance. It was the secret I was carrying, the one they would never suspect. This hotel, with its sweeping ocean views and luxurious amenities, was now mine, a legacy left by my grandfather, the only one who ever truly saw my worth. My mother, ever the organizer, began assigning rooms as if nothing had changed. Lucia and Roberto received the presidential suite. My parents got an executive suite. My cousins each had deluxe rooms. And I? Well, I got the smallest room, 108, right next to the laundry room. It was the least desirable, the noisiest, the most inconvenient room on the entire floor. I could feel the eyes of my family on me, some with pity, others with barely concealed amusement. Miguel, the hotel manager, hesitated before offering, "Ma'am, perhaps you could find a different room for Miss Carmen?" But my mother cut him off. "It's fine. Carmen doesn't need luxury," she said with a dismissive wave. "It's fine, Miguel," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Room 108 will be perfect." I accepted the key and walked away, feeling the weight of their stares on my back. The room was exactly as I remembered, small, with a view of the service area and the constant hum of the laundry machines. I sat on the bed, taking a deep breath. I wasn't here to confront them. I was here to understand why they'd always treated me as less than. At the welcome dinner that evening, the family sat at their grand table, while I was shoved into a corner, my chair half hidden behind a column. As they ordered extravagant meals and sipped fine wine, I opted for a simple salad. "Can't you afford something better, Carmen?" my father asked, his voice dripping with mockery and pity. "We could always treat you if you'd like." "The salad is fine." "Thank you," I replied, my voice calm, but my heart pounding. The conversation is always centered around Lucia's success, her recent promotion, her new house in an exclusive neighborhood. "Lucia always knew what you wanted," my mother said proudly. "Not like Carmen, who's still wasting her life with that drawing business." The head chef, Antonio, approached our table, and when he saw me, he gave a slight bow. "Was everything to your liking, Miss Carmen?" he asked respectfully. "Delicious, Antonio." "Thank you," I replied, my voice steady. Lucia blinked in surprise. "You know the chef?" she asked, her tone laced with suspicion. "We've crossed paths before," I replied, not wanting to reveal too much. The truth was, I had hired Antonio just 3 months ago, after inheriting the hotel. As the night wore on, the comments grew more cutting, and I felt the weight of my secret growing heavier. Should I reveal the truth? Should I let them know that everything they were mocking was happening under my roof? Later, Miguel approached me quietly. "Miss Carmen, there's something urgent you need to attend to," he said. What could possibly be urgent for Carmen? Roberto sneered, half drunk. Did they run out of colored pencils? I stood up, ignoring the jibe. Excuse me. I'll be back in a moment. In the office, Miguel looked at me with concern. Miss Carmen, I can't continue watching how they treat you. You're the owner of this hotel. They should respect you. I know, I said, my voice soft, but I need to understand something first. There's a wound in this family, something deep, and I need to know why they treat me like this. I spent the next few hours combing through old family documents, finding letters and photographs. And then I found it, the letter that changed everything. It was dated 15 years ago, written by my mother to my grandfather. Dad, you have to understand that Carmen isn't like us. She never was. If you continue treating her like your favorite, you'll only hurt her. She doesn't have what it takes to succeed in this family. Lucia is the one who should inherit the hotel someday. My hands shook as I read on. Letter after letter, year after year, my mother had written to my grandfather, trying to convince him that I wasn't worthy of his attention, that I didn't deserve the inheritance. She had systematically tried to undermine me. A handwritten note from my grandfather followed. It saddens me to see how you treat your own daughter. Carmen has a spirit and intelligence that you can't even see. Someday, all of you will realize the mistake you've made. The words hit me like a cold wave. It wasn't just envy or rivalry. My mother had deliberately orchestrated my marginalization within the family. Are you all right, miss? Miguel asked, his voice filled with concern as he saw my face. No, I replied, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. But I will be. I continued reading, and then I found something even more disturbing. My father and Roberto had tried to manipulate grandfather into selling them the hotel for a fraction of its value, shortly before his death. Their plan had failed when grandfather, suspicious of their intentions, decided to leave it to me instead. Before I could process it further, there was a knock at the door. It was Daniela, my cousin, standing in the doorway with an inquisitive look. What are you doing here, Carmen? She asked, eyeing the scattered documents. This area is off limits to family. Miguel quickly intervened. Miss Carmen was just looking into the hotel's operations, Miss Daniela. But Daniela wasn't convinced. Isn't it odd that they let you in here? They wouldn't even let us take a peek. Maybe I'm not as insignificant as everyone thinks, I said calmly, holding her gaze. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. You were always grandfather's favorite, she said slowly. We all knew it, though no one would admit it. After Daniela left, I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth would come out. The family would begin to suspect something, and I would be forced to make a choice, whether to keep enduring their ridicule or finally reveal that I was now the owner of everything they had coveted for so long. That night at the gala dinner, the storm that had been brewing since my arrival finally broke. The room was decorated with fresh flowers and fine crystal, the air thick with elegance. I arrived late deliberately. My black dress was simple yet elegant, one I had designed myself. Finally, you show up, my mother snapped. We were about to order without you. I took my seat at the usual spot, the one behind the column, the one that had always been farthest from a spotlight. Roberto, already half drunk, boasted about his real estate investments. I bought 3 properties on the coast last month, he bragged. If I play my cards right, I could even buy a hotel like this someday. Lucia smiled proudly. My husband has vision, she said, unlike some family members who waste their lives drawing logos. My father raised his glass to toast Roberto and Lucia, the family's true pride. To success, he said, and to those who know how to achieve it. I kept my glass on the table. No one noticed. Not yet. It wasn't until after the first course that Daniela finally spoke. Carmen, she said, her voice low but pointed. I saw you earlier in the hotel's private office. You seemed very comfortable there. What were you doing in restricted areas? Suddenly, the room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. I took a sip of water, my voice steady. I was just looking into the hotel's operations. Why does it matter? My mother raised an eyebrow. I had never truly understood until that moment. Our eyes locked in silent recognition. Carmen, she pressed gently. There's more, isn't there? Something about this hotel and grandfather that you've kept hidden. I gave a slow nod. Tomorrow everyone will know. The next morning broke with rare brightness. From my modest quarters beside the laundry, the hum of machines blended with the song of seabirds. I dressed with deliberate care, slipping into my ivory suit, one I reserved for significant occasions. Today would certainly be one of them. At breakfast, the atmosphere had shifted. No mocking, no dismissive comments, only silence, awkward glances, and an air of unease. My confession the previous night had unsettled the carefully guarded hierarchy. But what they'd heard was only a fragment of the truth. Mother was the first to bridge the silence. Carmen, dear, we had no idea your business was flourishing. You should have told us. I tried, I said evenly. Every time I spoke of a new client or project, you steered the conversation back to Lucia's triumphs. My sister flushed crimson. Well, the important thing is that now we know, Father chimed in, his tone softer than I'd ever heard it. We're proud of you. Roberto, though, stayed skeptical. $3 million in annual revenue? Impressive if it's real. And revenue isn't profit. My profit margin last year was 28% after taxes, I answered without flinching. His expression shifted, skepticism giving way to something bordering on respect. At exactly 10, Miguel approached. Senorita Carmen, the arrangements for your meeting are complete. The family looked puzzled. I prepared a presentation about the hotel's history, I explained. I thought it would interest you, considering how much it meant to grandfather. The conference room overlooked the ocean through towering windows. Inside, along with the management staff, stood a distinguished older man I recognized instantly. Arturo Mendez, grandfather's lawyer. What's the meaning of this, Carmen? Father demanded. Please take your seats. Once they did, I steadied my voice despite the racing of my heart. As you all know, Hotel Miramar was grandfather Ernesto's crown jewel. He built it from nothing, transforming a small inn into a landmark of prestige. Old photographs flashed on the screen. Nostalgia softened their faces, though confusion lingered. But what you may not know, I continued, is what truly became of the hotel after his passing. Mother stiffened. He sold it before he died. We never discovered the buyer. That isn't entirely correct, Mendez interjected coolly. Don Ernesto placed the hotel in a trust. A trust? Father echoed, frowning. Why weren't we told? Because it wasn't your concern, Mendez replied with professional detachment. The trust named only one beneficiary. Every gaze turned toward me. Lucia whispered, "It can't be." But I nodded. Yes. Grandfather left me the hotel. I've been the owner for 6 months. The silence that followed was suffocating. Roberto was first to lash out. Absurd. Why would he leave you, of all people, his most treasured asset? That's an excellent question, I replied, fixing my eyes on Mother. And perhaps she knows why. Her face blanched. I don't know what you're implying. I found your letters, Mother, the ones you sent to Grandfather, insisting I didn't deserve his attention or his inheritance. Gasps rippled through the room. She shrank into her chair. And I uncovered more, I went on, signaling Miguel. He handed folders to each family member. Inside, fraudulent appraisals, underhanded purchase offers, and emails proving Father and Roberto's scheme to wrest the hotel away. Father's hands shook as he flipped the pages. This is taken out of context. No, it isn't, Mendez cut in firmly. Don Ernesto showed me these documents himself. That was when he rewrote his will, leaving the hotel to Carmen, his only trusted heir. Roberto exploded, his face scarlet. This is a conspiracy. You manipulated the old man or the lawyer. You'll never handle this business. The results speak otherwise, I answered evenly. In 6 months, revenues rose 18%, guest satisfaction soared, and we've been shortlisted for 2 excellence awards. The staff nodded in quiet confirmation. Mother's confusion broke through at last. If you're truly the owner, why stay in that dreadful room? Why let's treat you like dirt? I drew a breath, because I needed to know whether you all truly believed I was worthless or whether it was fear. Fear of what would happen if grandfather recognized my worth. Tears threatened, but I held steady. And I discovered it wasn't that you thought I had no value. It was that you couldn't bear for others, especially him, to see it. Mother dropped her gaze. Her letters had revealed everything. The jealousy, the resentment, the competition I never knew existed. You were his reflection, she admitted in a choked voice. His living image, his spirit. He lit up when he spoke of you, and I, his own daughter, never saw that look directed at me. The revelation shattered the room. Father, aged and diminished, said nothing. Lucia sat motionless, absorbing it all. Roberto fumed in silence. And I made a choice. Despite all of this, I declared, I remain part of this family. I could have humiliated you, cast you out, but I won't. Grandfather left me this hotel not just to safeguard his business, but to heal us. I moved toward the window, the sea vast before me. There is something else in the trust. Mendez handed me an envelope, grandfather's letter. I read aloud his words of love, of disappointment, of faith in me, and of his deepest wish, that we rebuild as a family rooted in respect, not rivalry. By the time I finished, many were in tears. Mother broke first. All these years competing with my own child. Carmen, I don't know if you can forgive me. I saw sincerity in her eyes at last. That's all I ever wanted, Mom, I whispered. Father admitted his vanity. Lucia confessed her blind ambition. Roberto stormed out, still consumed by anger. Mendez revealed one final clause. I had discretion to grant minority stakes, but only if my relatives demonstrated commitment to grandfather's values. I laid out my vision, a family council not for power, but for philanthropy and legacy. Shares would be earned, not gifted. It was the beginning of something new,